I have never claimed to be more than anything than a beginning gardener here on my channel, because it's true. But now that I've had a few years to begin to see the error in my ways, I thought I'd make a video and tell you about the 5 biggest problems that I created myself as I was learning to garden. And if you've watched almost any of my videos, it's obvious that I love these raised garden beds. In fact, around my entire property right now, I have 20 beds installed and in use for various projects. But the first big mistake that I made is that I live on a sloped property, and bed by bed, as I was installing them, I didn't take the time to level them out. And the funny thing, it's in the area that's probably the least sloped that it's the most obvious. If I back up here, you can kind of see the angles. I mean, they still do their job, but I get to look out every day and see a little slopey slope happening. The beds are fine, but I wish it didn't look like this. And I'm planning to install more this year, so I want to go a little bit slower and make sure that I get things leveled off and ready for the fact that they're going to settle in a little bit. Now, these all don't look terrible, but they could look better. And so really, I think the lesson there for me is to slow down. I probably should have done that with special effects, but you know, I'm all for having a little bit of fun here in the meadow. The second thing is thinking about placement. And so right now with the sun up, this bed is really nice and sunny because it's winter. But guess what? That fig tree right over there throws a whole bunch of shade. And then when this persimmon tree is fully foliated, it also throws shade, leaving almost no sun on this garden bed. And so one of the things that I'll change this year is this garden bed has got to move. And as I think about new garden beds in the future, now that I know what's growing on in my garden, I can make better decisions. The third thing is trellis height. Now, while I can reach this one, it's because it was cut off a little to fit somewhere else. But let's take a look down here. These beds are a little closer together, so bent in half, I, without getting a stool, can't reach to harvest things that were growing on the top. And so 2 things affected that. One, down there, I know that that panel's just a little bit shorter, or at least I think it is, but maybe it's simply because the garden beds are a little further apart. And so now I have a solution for this. I'm gonna figure out where I can reach, which is probably right here, and then down at the bottom of the cattle panel, I am going to bring in my bolt cutters and cut out a few sections, maybe just a section at a time, check the height, rebend this one and that one, and this one, I can't even touch that one, and even this one, because we get some great loofah growing up here, but I can't reach it unless I get a stool and go and stand in the middle. Next, I have been really shy about pruning. Now, you may have seen my other video where I was pruning the fig tree, but I mean the big prune. The pruning to make it easier to manage the plants, the pruning to make it easier to cover the plants, that I've been neglectful for. In fact, with this avocado now, I've really sort of left it unpruned in a way that it's sort of difficult to manage when it's time to cover it up for winter. And I also, actually, this one applies to the shade, because as the sun comes across here, this throws a lot of shade on that bed over there. So eventually I really do want to move this avocado tree out of the way and put it somewhere else. But now let's talk about some other pruning too. When you have so many different varieties, like I have this blueberry here that isn't looking very good, honestly. It's still green though, but I probably should have pruned it back sooner, maybe at the end of the last season. I've just got to do more research on these things and make sure that I'm pruning the right plants at the right time in the right season, because ultimately I want to be able to manage the plants. I want to be able to easily pick the fruits and the bounty from them without having to get on a stool. And I want to make sure that we can protect them during the colder months. We don't have a lot of things that need protection, but we do have some. Now, along the line of pruning, we could also think about thinning. And so, for instance, here with the bananas, technically, you should allow one plant to have just one of the corms grow up, and then everything else should be thinned out, whether you plant it in another hole, whether you give it to friends, stick in a bucket, whatever. But that allows the mother plant to shoot up and give you bananas, and then once she's done that, you chop her down and her replacement baby can come up and do the job again. This started with just 9, I think I started with 9 banana plants. Yes, plants, not trees. You can check out one of my other videos to learn why I say that, because it is a plant, not a tree. But right now, gosh, I bet there's 40 in there. And so probably we should have 18 or 19 based on the original amount I started with. So this will be one of the projects for getting some more cleaning up. But it's not just the bananas. It's things like the lemongrass too, which needs to be dug up and separated, harvested, and then redistributed some so that it can continue to thrive and grow. The next thing that I have found is true for me, and it's across all 5 years, regardless of garden beds, is inconsistent watering and inconsistent feeding. Having a garden as large as I do, as quickly as it grew, I never kind of got into figuring out all of those little things. One thing that really helped me this past year was having a rain gauge. So I knew that if we didn't have rain within a couple of days, I would come out and check it every morning. If we hadn't had rain, it was time to water. And so this did help with the watering. And in fact, I even installed some irrigation. And you can easily see there's water hoses here and pipes. I did install the irrigation, but let's get a little closer and you can see every bed, well, almost every bed, I missed that one. Every bed has a little bit of a riser. I can control the off and on to every bed. I did a little manifold system here so I can control it. But where I made the mistake is I tested different products off the manifold. So I have this great product here. This product right here is from Garden in Minutes. It's a grid, but it only needs to run for 10 to 15 minutes. Whereas on this garden bed, on the same distribution, it's kind of hard to see because I've got pruning left over to work on, but down there you can see the brown wires. This is a light drip irrigation. So for this to irrigate as much as I need it to, this bed needs to run for an hour or more, yet they're on the same line and the same timer. And so one of the challenges this year will be to make sure that I am putting the right grids on the right beds in the right places. And I am not sure that I am in love with this brown drip irrigation. I'm excited about the company. I'm excited about the things I learned, but it just takes a long time, or maybe I just didn't use nearly enough tubing in there to make it effective. Then for the green stalks, they got moved out of the way and almost completely forgotten for watering. And over here, I started the project, but I never got it finished to add irrigation. So this is going to be probably one of my big projects for the year, is to figure out how I get consistent irrigation across all of these raised garden beds so that I can have a little more fun and not just walk around with a hose. Though I have to tell you, walking around the hose means that you get to see everything that's going on. But it gives me more time to think about pruning and to think about nutrients. So let's talk about that for a second. when I start my veggies in the garden beds, I use a high quality compost, and I do a little of the little tricks of the trade when I'm transplanting and up potting the different plants. So those I'm not so worried about, but things like the avocado tree and then all of the fruit trees I have out here on Orchard Row, they need a little more love than I've been giving them. So my goal this season is to get myself a calendar and make sure that I can coordinate and do my very best adding some organic uptake and organic nutrients to help these guys do a lot better, because they've been in for a couple of years now. They haven't produced a lot of fruit. I've had some, but it's on me because I've been a bad mother to them. And so we're gonna fix that this season. And finally, I just didn't harvest frequently enough. There were a lot of things that were growing that it would have been much better for me to harvest the fruits and the vegetables young so that the plants had the opportunity to put on more growth and more food. And so for instance, with the loofah, I did a bunch of tests to try to figure out what's the right size to get the loofah so that it is also edible and tasty, but gives us the most food for the money. Well, you know what? Turns out it did a lot better when I was frequently harvesting them and cutting them down when they were between 8 and 12 inches, as opposed to waiting to 18 inches, because it still tasted okay at 18 inches, but that also meant when I cut that off, it took a while for it to begin producing other flowers and other pieces of vegetable, other plant product, so to speak. And so, and the same thing here. The tomatoes themselves had a second run. I can show you. The tomatoes had a second run because I didn't pull them out. And I just missed getting out here to harvest this. So they're all over the ground. And I didn't get to eat these. That was kind of a waste of food. I lost some of the eggplant that were on here because I didn't get them harvested. And that really was, I just got out of my routine. A lot of things were going on. But it's something that I know now, after having this happen for a few years, that I really want to get right in this next growing season. And so those are my confessions. I'm sure if you've watched some of my videos, you have opinions on other things that I could have done better. And guess what? I welcome those in the comments below. I welcome your questions. The beautiful thing here on YouTube is we have this great community of people who are engaging with one another in the comments, people who are asking questions. I still think of myself as a beginner. I just went really fast. I had an opportunity to go fast and I took it and I ran with it, and I did a whole lot of stuff in just a few years. I mean, this garden, we're just at 6 years old, and the raised metal garden beds I've only had for 3 years. So all of the stuff that's fairly visible in the yard, I've all done it in 3 years, and started after having shoulder surgery. And so don't think you can't get started, because guess what? You can always back up, make things better, do them better, grow more, water more, fertilize more. All those things are absolutely overcomable. The one thing I will say is that I do wish I had slowed down just a little in the beginning, making sure that I had the beds leveled. Of all the things that I've done, the one that'll be a little harder to fix is getting the beds leveled. And so I'll say if you're building a garden bed, whether you're using one of these great beds from Epic Gardening for the birdies, or you're using some of the other brands, or you're building your own, make sure that your site is as level as you need it to be. Like on the slope over here, I'm not so worried about it sloping down this way, but it's the side to side. And so one bed is like this, the other bed is like that. And so I would just love aesthetically for it to be a little more level. And I think over time it does help. And of course, when I'm looking at this garden row here of beds, this appears in almost every video. And so every time I'm editing, I'm like, oh, why didn't you just take 5 more minutes or 10 more minutes per garden bed and make that better? So, my friends, that is everything for this video. If you want to see more of what's growing on in the meadow, be sure to check out this video right over here. And until next time, remember to drink plenty of water, wear that high quality sunscreen, and as always, have a fantastic day.